on the edge of known space where stars grew thin and silence stretched like old cloth. The salvage freighter Whisper of Sol drifted through a graveyard of broken ships. Its hull was patched with scrap metal. Its engines coughed more than they hummed, and its only crew was a young woman named Lila Morgan. She wore grease-stained coveralls, had short brown hair tucked behind her ears, and eyes that had seen too many empty cargo holds. But she was good with her hands, better with machines, and stubborn enough to keep flying when others would have given up. Today, she floated in zero gravity near the remains of a massive warship. It had been torn apart by something violent, maybe a battle, maybe a trap. Jagged metal bones jutted out like ribs, and frozen debris spun slowly in the dark. Lila's suit lights cut through the gloom as she moved carefully, tethered to her ship by a thin cable. She wasn't looking for weapons or credits. She was looking for parts, anything that could be fixed, sold, or reused. Survival out here wasn't about glory. It was about bolts, batteries, and not running out of air. Then she saw it. Half buried in a tangle of wiring and shattered plating was a smooth, palm-sized crystal. It glowed faintly, pulsing like a slow heartbeat. No markings, no ports, just pure light trapped in glass. Leela reached for it. The moment her glove touched the surface, warmth spread up her arm, and for a second, she thought she heard whispering. Not in her ears, but in her mind. She shook her head, chalked it up to fatigue, and tucked the shard into her belt pouch. Back inside the Whisper of Sol, she sealed the airlock and peeled off her helmet. The ship groaned as it adjusted its orbit, and the recycled air smelled like oil and stale coffee. She sat at her workbench, placed the crystal under a magnifier, and tried to scan it with her handheld reader. Nothing. No data, no language, no energy signature the machine recognized. It was like the thing didn't belong in this universe. Weird, she muttered, turning it over in her hands. That's when the lights flickered. Not the usual flicker from a power dip. This was different, like something had stepped between her and the light source. Lila spun around, hand instinctively going to the stun baton at her hip. A woman stood in the doorway to the cargo bay. She hadn't been there a second ago. No alarm had sounded. No door had opened. Yet there she was, tall, pale, with long silver hair that seemed to float slightly as if underwater. Her eyes were the color of storm clouds, sharp and ancient. She wore a dark, flowing coat lined with what looked like woven starlight, and at her side hung a slender blade that hummed softly. Her ears tapered to delicate points. Lila's breath caught. Elf. Not from any myth she knew, but the word popped into her head anyway. This woman looked like she'd walked out of an old storybook, except her gaze was hard, focused, and locked onto the crystal in Lila's hand. "Don't move," Lila said, voice steady despite the hammering in her chest. The woman didn't raise her hands. She didn't look afraid. Instead, she took one slow step forward. "That does not belong to you," she said. Her voice was calm, melodic, but carried weight, like wind through ancient trees. "Found it fair and square," Lila replied, keeping her grip on the baton. "Who are you? How'd you get on my ship?"
"My name is Alara Vane," the woman said.
"I have been searching for that shard for 312 years. It is the last key to the Vault of Echoes. If the Devourers find it, they will unmake the last memory of your world." Lila blinked. "My world? Earth? That's just a dead rock now. Nobody's heard from it in centuries." Ilara's eyes narrowed. "You are from Earth?" "Born and raised. Well, born in orbit, raised on Mars Colony 7, but yeah, Earth heritage. Got the ID chip to prove it." Without thinking, Lila tapped the small metal disc embedded in her forearm. It was standard issue for all human-descended citizens, even out here in the fringe. It held her name, birthplace, and genetic lineage. Ilara's gaze dropped to the chip. Her breath hitched. For a long moment, nothing moved. The ship's hum faded into the background. Even the air seemed to hold still. Then Ilara's eyes snapped wide open. Her lips parted. And in a voice that cracked with awe and terror and something like joy, she shouted, "He's real. The one from my dreams." Leela flinched. I'm not a he. I'm Lila." But Ilara wasn't listening. She stepped closer, her hands trembling. "In every dream for generations my people have seen him. The lone warrior from the blue-green world. Clad in rusted steel, bearing the mark of the fallen cradle. He walks through fire and silence, and where he stands, the Devourers fall back. We thought it was a myth, a hope, but you carry the blood. You carry the name. Look," Lila said, backing up slightly, "I'm just a scavenger. I fix engines. I eat protein paste. I don't fight wars or save galaxies. You do not understand, Alara whispered. Earth is not forgotten. It is feared. Hidden. Erased from star charts, scrubbed from records. But in the dreams of my kind it lives, and you are the proof. Before Lila could respond, a low, grinding vibration shook the ship. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed along the ceiling. Outside the viewport, the blackness of space began to ripple, not with stars, but with something else. Dark, shifting shapes like living smoke made of teeth and wire. They moved without sound, swallowing light as they came closer. The Devourers, Ilara said, her voice tight. They sensed the shard's activation. They are here. Great, Lila muttered, already moving to the control panel. Just what I needed. A cosmic horror show on my payday. She slammed her palm on the ignition. The engine sputtered, then roared to life. The whisper of soul jerked forward, throwing both women off balance. Lila grabbed a handhold and yanked the ship into a sharp turn, dodging a tendril of darkness that lashed out like a whip. Can your ship outrun them? Ilara asked, bracing herself against the wall. Not a chance, Lila said, fingers flying over the console. But I can lose them in the asteroid belt near Gamma 9 if we're lucky. We do not have time for luck, Ilara said. She closed her eyes, placed a hand on the floor, and spoke a single word in a language that made the metal groan. Outside, the stars seemed to bend. A shadow detached itself from the void. Not part of the Devourers, but something older. It unfolded like a wing made of night, then roared. The sound wasn't heard, it was felt deep in the bones. Lila stared out the window as a massive shape emerged. A dragon, but not like the ones from old Earth tales. This creature was sleek, its scales shimmering with veins of blue and gold like molten glass filled with lightning. Its eyes burned with white fire, and when it beat its wings, space itself rippled. It coiled around the whisper of soul like a shield, then let out another silent roar that sent the Devourers recoiling. That's your pet? Lila asked, stunned. His name is Kelthar, Ilara said, pride and sorrow in her voice. He has slept in the void for 200 years, waiting for the signal. The shard woke him. And you woke the dream. Kelthar turned his great head toward the ship's viewport. His gaze locked onto Lila. For a heartbeat, she felt seen. Not as a scavenger, not as a nobody, but as something important, something remembered. Get us out of here, Ilara said. I will guide you, but you must trust me. Lila looked from the dragon to the elf to the Devourers closing in like a storm. She thought about her empty cargo hold, her overdue fuel debt, her quiet life of fixing broken things. Then she thought about the crystal in her pocket, the way it had warmed her hand, the whisper in her mind. She took a deep breath. Fine, she said, but if this gets me killed, I'm haunting you. She punched the thrusters. The whisper of Saul shot forward. Kelthar soaring beside it like a guardian made of starlight. Behind them, the Devourers shrieked in fury, their forms twisting in rage. As they raced toward the safety of the nebula ahead, Ilara watched Lila with new eyes. The prophecy had always said he, but maybe the dreamers had been wrong. Maybe the savior of worlds wasn't a man in armor. Maybe it was a woman with grease on her hands and earth in her blood, who didn't believe in destiny, but would fight for it anyway. And for the first time in centuries, Ilara felt hope. The whisper of soul tore through the edge of the Ashen Veil Nebula, its hull groaning under stress. Behind it, the Devourers shrieked in silent fury, their dark forms stretching like ink in water, trying to close the gap. But Kelthar flew like a storm given wings. His massive body cut through cosmic dust, leaving trails of shimmering light. Every beat of his wings sent pulses of energy that pushed the swarm back, if only for a moment. Inside the ship, Lila gripped the controls with white knuckles. Sweat beaded on her forehead. They're not giving up, she said, voice tight. They never do, Ilara replied, standing beside her, eyes fixed on the rear display. The Devourers are drawn to memory, to stories. And that shard? It holds the last echo of Earth's final stand. Lila glanced at the crystal resting on the console. It pulsed softly in time with her heartbeat. So what do we do now? Hide forever? No, Ilara said. We go to Xylos Prime. There is a place there, the Library of Shattered Skies. It holds records older than the Sylvan Concord. If anyone knows how to stop the Devourers, it is the Archivists. Great. More old books and riddles, Lila muttered. But she adjusted course anyway. She had no better plan. Kelthar banked sharply, leading them into a dense cloud of violet gas. The devourers slowed, confused by the interference. For now, they were safe. As the ship stabilized, Lila finally let herself breathe. She turned to Ilara. "Okay, talk. Who are you, really? And why did you freak out over my ID chip?" Ilara sat slowly, her silver hair catching the dim light. "My people are the Sylvan. We live among the rings of Veralia, where time flows differently. For centuries, our seers have dreamed the same vision. A lone human standing on a broken moon, holding a blade forged from silence. Around him, the devourers burn. The dream always ends with him whispering one word, 'Remember.' And you thought that was me?" Leela asked, rubbing her temples. "I don't even own a blade." "The dream never showed a face," Ilara said softly. "Only the mark of earth on his skin. Your ID chip. It carries that mark. The genetic signature of the cradle world. When I saw it, I knew the dream was real. Not a myth. Not a hope. A warning." Lila fell silent. She thought of her grandmother who used to tell stories about Earth. Green forests, blue oceans, cities that touched the clouds. "Earth's gone," she said finally. "Wiped out in the last Great War. That's what they teach in school." "They lie," Ilara said. "Earth did not fall. It chose to vanish. After the war, your people scattered across the stars, erased their trails, and buried their weapons. They feared what they had become. But the devourers never forgot. They hunt for the key to wake what was hidden. And that key is you." "Me?" Lila laughed, but it was hollow. "I'm nobody." "You are human," Ilara said, as if that explained everything. Outside, Kael'thar let out a low, rumbling purr. He circled the ship once, then landed on the hull with surprising grace. Through the viewport, Lila saw him curl around the freighter like a cat around a warm stone. His eyes glowed softly, watching the dark. "He likes you," Ilara said, a small smile touching her lips. "He's a dragon. Shouldn't he be breathing fire or eating planets or something?" "Kael'thar is not a beast," Ilara said gently. "He is a guardian. His kind bonded with the first Sylvan long ago. They are keepers of memory. And right now, he senses something in you. Something old." Lila didn't know what to say to that, so she checked the fuel levels, rerouted power to the shields, and tried to ignore the weight settling in her chest. 2 days later, they reached the outer rim of the Ashen Veil. The nebula here was thick with ion storms and drifting wreckage. It was perfect for hiding, but as they passed a cluster of frozen asteroids, Kael'thar suddenly tensed. His wings flared and a warning hum vibrated through the ship's frame. "What is it?" Lila asked. Ilara's face went pale. "They found us." From the shadows between the rocks, 3 devourer hunters emerged. Smaller than the swarm, but faster. Their bodies were sleek, made of shifting metal and bone, with glowing red eyes that locked onto the whisper of Saul. "Hold on," Lila yelled. She slammed the thrusters to full. The ship lurched forward, weaving through the asteroid field. Lasers streaked past the hull, melting rock into glass. One shot clipped the port engine. Alarms blared. Kael'thar roared. Not a sound, but a wave of force that shattered 2 of the hunters. The third dodged, then lunged. Lila spun the ship hard to starboard. The hunter missed, but its claw scraped the hull, tearing open a panel. Oxygen hissed out. "Seal bulkhead 3, Ilara shouted. Lila hit the switch. The door slammed shut. But now they were losing air and the engine was damaged. Kael'thar dove after the last hunter. He caught it mid-air, his jaws closing around its core. Light exploded, blue, then white, then silence. The hunter dissolved into ash, but the victory was short-lived. In the distance, the main swarm gathered again, darker and larger than before. "We can't outrun them again," Lila said, voice low. Ilara closed her eyes. Then she placed her hand on the crystal. "There is another way," she began to sing. It wasn't a song Lila recognized. The notes were strange, bending in ways human voices couldn't. The air shimmered, the crystal flared bright, and Kael'thar changed. His scales turned from gold to deep indigo. His wings stretched wider, edged with starlight. He let out a cry that echoed not in space, but in time. Around them, the nebula twisted. Space folded, and then they were gone. When Lila opened her eyes, they were floating near a small, rocky moon. No devourers in sight, just quiet stars and a single ringed planet in the distance. "Where are we?" she asked. "The Veil's heart," Ilara said, exhausted. "A pocket of folded space. They cannot follow here." For now. Kael'thar landed on the hull, his glow dimming. He looked tired, older. "He gave too much," Ilara whispered. The jump drained him. Lila watched the dragon. For the first time, she saw him not as a weapon, but as a friend, a loyal one. Is he going to be okay? If we reach the library in time, Alara said. The archivist can help. They have healing springs made from liquid memory. Lila nodded. She patched the hull as best she could, rerouted power, and set a new course. This time she didn't complain. As they traveled, Alara told her more about the Sylvan, who once tried to erase Earth from history because they feared its power. About the Devourers who were not born evil. They were once a peaceful race corrupted by a weapon they could not control. And about the dream, which had haunted her since childhood. I saw you, Alara admitted one night as the ship drifted through quiet space. Not your face, but your spirit. You stood on a battlefield of stars and you did not fight with weapons. You spoke. And the Devourers wept, Lila snorted. Yeah, right. I can barely talk to my landlord. But deep down something stirred. Maybe it was the crystal. Maybe it was Kael'thar's steady presence. Or maybe it was the fact that for the first time in her life someone believed she mattered. 3 days later they arrived at Xylos Prime. The planet was small, gray, and covered in floating islands of stone. Each island held towers made of glass and bone, connected by bridges of light. At the center floated the library, a massive sphere of black crystal humming with energy. As they approached, a voice spoke in their minds, calm, ancient, female. State your purpose. Ilara bowed her head. Ilara Vane of the Sylvan Conquered. I bring the bearer of the Earthmark and the last Sky Dragon. We seek the truth of the Vault of Echoes. Silence. Then, land on Platform 7. The whisper of soul descended slowly. Kael'thar landed beside it, his steps careful. He was weaker now, his glow faint. As Lila stepped onto the platform, a woman appeared. She was tall, wrapped in gray robes with milky white eyes. She carried no weapon, but her presence filled the air like thunder. I am Mira, she said. Blind, but I see more than most. You carry the Echo Child, Lila swallowed. I don't know what that means. You will, Mira said. She turned to Ilara. And you? You have brought the dreamer to the dream. Before Lila could ask what that meant, Mira reached out. Give me your hand. Hesitant, Lila obeyed. The moment Mira's fingers touched her skin, visions exploded in Lila's mind. She saw a soldier in mud, holding a photo of her daughter. A scientist crying as she launched the last ship from Earth. A child planting a seed in radioactive soil, whispering, grow. 1,000 faces, 1,000 voices. All human, all fighting, all hoping. Tears streamed down Layla's face. What is this? The Echo, Mira said softly. Not one hero, but all of them. Humanity's will. It's pain, it's love. That is the true weapon, not fire, not steel. Memory. Ilara stared at Lila, realization dawning. The prophecy. It was never about one person. It was about all of you. Just then, Kael'thar let out a weak cry. His scales were turning dull, his light fading. The Devourer's poison is in him, Mira said. Come, the healing springs are below. They followed her into the library. As they walked, Lila felt the weight of every human who ever lived pressing gently on her shoulders. Not as a burden, as a promise. And for the first time, she didn't feel like just a scavenger. She felt like she belonged to something bigger, something worth fighting for. The Library of Shattered Skies was not built from stone or steel. It was made of memory. Every wall shimmered with faces long gone. Every corridor echoed with voices from dead worlds. Lila walked slowly, her boots silent on the glass floor, her breath shallow. She could feel them. Thousands of lives pressing gently against her mind, not loud but present, like stars in a clear night sky. Myra led them deep into the heart of the sphere. Kael'thar followed, his steps heavy, his wings dragging slightly. His once bright scales were now dull gray at the edges, as if the light inside him was leaking away. Ilara stayed close to him, one hand resting on his neck, whispering soft words in her old tongue. They reached a circular chamber open to the sky. In its center bubbled a pool of liquid that glowed silver blue. It did not reflect light, it made its own. Tiny sparks swirled within it like fireflies. The Spring of Echoes, Mira said. It is fed by the last tears of forgotten civilizations. It can heal what is broken, but only if the soul is willing to remember. Kael'thar lowered his head. Without hesitation, he stepped into the pool. The moment the liquid touched his claws, a soft hum filled the air. His scales began to brighten just a little, but the healing was slow. He gave too much in the jump, Ilara said, worry etched into her face. And the Devourer's touch lingers. Mira turned to Lila. You must help him. Me? How? The spring responds to human memory. Your blood carries the strongest echo. If you enter the water, your presence will speed his healing. Lila looked at the pool. It seemed harmless, but something about it made her nervous. What happens if I go in? You will see more, Mira said simply. You will feel what your ancestors felt: joy, fear, loss, hope. It may be overwhelming, but you are stronger than you know. Lila glanced at Alara, who gave a small nod. Then she looked at Kael'thar, who met her eyes with quiet trust. She took a deep breath, pulled off her boots, and stepped into the spring. Cold. Not icy, but deep, like the ocean at night. The moment the water touched her skin, images flooded her mind, not as dreams, but as real as breathing. She stood in a city of glass towers, watching the sky burn as ships fell like rain. She held a dying friend in a trench, whispering a lullaby her mother taught her. She launched a seed vault into space, knowing she would never see it grow. She stood alone on a frozen moon facing a machine god and said, "You will not take our future." Each memory was not hers, yet it felt like it was. Tears ran down her cheeks. She wanted to pull away, but something held her. Love, maybe, or duty. Then a new vision. A woman in a white lab coat stood before a massive machine buried beneath Earth's crust. Her face was tired, but her eyes were fierce. She placed her hand on a panel and spoke. "We are not ending the war. We are ending the cycle. Let them forget us. Let them think we fell. But if they ever need us..." The echo will rise. The machine activated. Light swallowed the planet. And then, silence. Lila gasped and stumbled back, breaking the surface. She fell to her knees on the edge of the pool, shaking. "What did you see?" Alara asked, kneeling beside her. "Earth didn't die," Lila whispered. "They hid. On purpose. They buried something. A weapon, but not a bomb. Something else." Mira nodded. "The Forge of Echoes. It lies beneath a dead moon in the Sol system. It holds the collective will of humanity, not as data, but as living memory. The Devourers seek to corrupt it, to turn human hope into despair. If they succeed, every human-descended soul in the galaxy will lose the will to fight." Ilara's eyes widened. That is why the dream showed a warrior. Not to fight alone, but to awaken the forge. Lila looked at her hands. They were still trembling. "But I don't know how to use it." "I'm not special. You do not need to be," Mira said. "The forge does not choose heroes. It chooses hearts. And yours is full of earth." Just then, Kael'thar lifted his head. His scales shone brighter now, blue and gold returning to their full glow. He let out a soft, rumbling purr and nudged Lila gently with his snout. She smiled weakly. "Guess I'm stuck with you guys." Mira helped her to her feet. "You must leave soon. The Devourers have found the Veil's edge. They are breaking through." As if on cue, the library trembled. Far above, the sky darkened. Not with clouds, but with the same shifting blackness that had chased them before. "They are here," Alara said, drawing her blade. "Not yet," Mira said calmly. "The library has defenses, but they will not hold long. You must go to the forge. It is your only chance." She led them to a hidden hangar beneath the library. There, resting on a platform of light, was a small vessel, sleek, silver, shaped like a falling leaf. "The Skiff of Remembrance," Mira said. "It was built by human hands long ago. It will take you to the forge, and it will answer only to you." Lila stared at the ship. It looked ancient yet alive. As she approached, its surface rippled and a door opened with a soft sigh. "How do you know all this?" Layla asked. "Because I was there," Mira said quietly. "I was one of the last to leave Earth. I chose to stay behind to guard the memory. Now, my watch ends." Alara bowed deeply. "Thank you, Archivist." Mira placed a hand on Lila's shoulder. "Do not fear the weight. Carry it gently. And remember, you are never alone." They boarded the skiff. Kael'thar folded his wings and curled around the hull, his body merging with the ship's energy field. Alara took the co-pilot seat. Lila sat in the center chair. The moment she touched the controls, warmth spread through her palms. The ship hummed as if greeting an old friend. Outside, the sky cracked. Devourers poured through, their forms twisting the air. "Hold on," Lila said. The skiff shot upward faster than the whisper of soul ever could. It tore through the atmosphere, leaving the library behind. Below, the Devourers swarmed the floating islands, but the library's defenses flared. Beams of pure memory lashing out, turning the hunters to dust. As they entered orbit, Lila looked back one last time. The library glowed brightly, then dimmed as if going to sleep. "She bought us time," Alara said. "We can't waste it," Lila replied. The skiff's navigation lit up with a single destination. Sol System, Sector 7, Dead Moon designation Luna 9, that's Earth's moon, Lila said, surprised. "I thought it was just rubble." "It is," Alara said. But beneath the rubble, the forge waits. For the next 2 days they traveled in silence. Kelthar rested, his light steady. Alara studied old star charts, searching for traps or ambushes. Lila tried to sleep, but the memories wouldn't let her. She kept seeing the woman in the lab coat, the soldier in the trench, the child with the seed. She realized something. Humanity didn't win wars with weapons. It won with stubborn hope, with small acts of courage that added up over centuries. Maybe that was the real weapon. On the 3rd day, they entered the Sol System. The sun was the same yellow star Lila had seen in history files, but the planets were quiet. Mars was red and empty. Earth was a green-blue ghost wrapped in clouds, but no signals came from it. No cities, no ships, just silence, and there, orbiting the dead world, was the moon, cratered, gray, and still. The skiff slowed as it approached Luna 9. The surface looked barren. But as they got closer, Lila saw it, a faint energy signature beneath the largest crater. "The forge is down there," she said. "Then we go in," Alara said. Kelthar landed gently on the dusty surface. The 3 of them stepped out onto the moon. The silence was absolute. No wind, no sound, just the crunch of their boots on regolith. At the crater's edge, a hatch lay hidden under layers of dust. Lila brushed it away. The metal was old, but intact. She placed her hand on it. The hatch recognized her ID chip instantly. With a hiss of ancient hydraulics, it opened. A staircase led down into darkness. Alara drew her blade. Kelthar stayed close, his light cutting through the gloom. Lila took the first step. Deep below the moon's surface, the Forge of Echoes waited, and it knew she had come home. The stairs spiraled deep into the moon's crust. The air grew warmer the farther they went. Humming with a low, steady vibration, Lila led the way, her boots echoing in the narrow passage. Alara followed close behind, her blade ready. Kelthar stayed just outside the entrance, his massive form blocking the hatch. His eyes scanning the empty sky for threats. At the bottom they found a vast chamber. It was not built of metal or stone, but of something else. Smooth, dark material that seemed to drink the light. In the center stood a tall pedestal, and on it rested a sphere of swirling silver mist. Around the walls, thousands of small lights pulsed like distant stars. As Lila stepped forward, a voice spoke, not from any speaker, but from the air itself. "Welcome home. Child of Earth." The voice was calm, warm, and familiar. Lila froze. "Who are you?" "I am Juno," the voice said. "Last guardian of the Forge of Echoes. I have waited 12,000 years for you." Alara looked around, wary. "Is it safe?" "It is as safe as memory allows," Juno replied. "The Devourers have not breached this place, but they are close. They sense the Forge's awakening." Lila approached the pedestal. The silver sphere shimmered as she neared. "What is this place?" "This is where humanity chose silence," Juno said. "After the last war, your ancestors realized their greatest weapon was not fire or steel, but will. The will to hope, to rebuild, to love even in darkness. They encoded that will into the Forge, not as data, but as living memory. Every human who ever lived left a trace here. Their courage, their dreams, their final thoughts." Lila reached out. Her fingers hovered over the sphere. "Why me?" "Because you carry the mark, and because you are willing to listen." Before she could pull back, the sphere flared. Light filled the chamber. Lila cried out as visions crashed into her mind, not one at a time, but all at once. She was a medic on a burning battlefield, pressing her hands to a wound that would not close. She was a teacher in a bunker, reading stories to children while bombs fell outside. She was an engineer on a failing ship, rerouting power with her own body to save her crew. She was a mother whispering, "Be brave," as she sent her child into an escape pod. Each life lasted only seconds, but the feelings remained: fear, love, sacrifice, joy. It was too much. She fell to her knees, gasping. "Stop," she begged. "You must endure," Juno said gently. "To awaken the Forge, you must undergo the trial of echoes. Relive the final moments of 10,000 lives, not to suffer, but to understand. Humanity's strength is not in one hero. It is in all of them. Ilara knelt beside her. You do not have to do this alone. Lila shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I have to. It's my blood. My history. She closed her eyes and let the memories come. Hour after hour, she sat in the center of the chamber, trembling, weeping, sometimes laughing through tears. Ilara stayed by her side, holding her hand when the pain grew too sharp. Kelthar remained at the entrance, his light dimming and brightening with Lila's emotions. As the trial went on, something changed. Lila's skin began to glow faintly, like starlight underwater. Her hair lifted slightly as if charged. And Kelthar, he changed too. His scales, once gold and blue, now shimmered with tiny points of light like constellations. His wings pulsed with soft color, shifting from red to green to blue. He let out a low hum that resonated with the forge. He is bonding with her spirit, Juno said. The dragon is becoming a vessel for human memory. Ilara watched in awe. The prophecy was wrong. It was never about a warrior. It was about connection. After what felt like days, the vision slowed. The last memory came. A young man on a ruined earth planting a single tree in poisoned soil. He looked up at the sky and whispered, "Grow." Then silence. Lila opened her eyes. They were no longer just brown. They held flecks of silver like distant galaxies. I understand now, she said, her voice stronger. The forge isn't a weapon to be fired. It's a song to be sung. Exactly, Juno said. And the devourers fear songs more than bombs. Just then the ground shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Kelthar roared, a real sound this time, deep and powerful. They are here, Ilara said, drawing her blade. On the surface, the sky turned black, not with night but with the devourer swarm. They had found the moon, and they were coming down. There is no time, Juno said. You must activate the forge now. How? Layla asked. Stand on the central plate. Speak your truth. The forge will do the rest. Lila walked to the center of the chamber. The floor lit up beneath her feet. She took a deep breath. I am Leela Morgan, she said. I am not a hero. I am a mechanic, a scavenger, a daughter of Earth. And I remember, the forge responded. Light exploded outward, not blinding, but warm. It shot up through the moon's crust, bursting into the sky like 1,000 shooting stars. The light did not burn. It carried voices, songs, lullabies, last words, hopes. Across the galaxy, something stirred. On mining colonies, human workers paused, tears in their eyes. Hearing their grandmother's voice on warships, soldiers dropped their weapons, remembering why they fought. In hidden villages, children looked up and felt a sudden warmth like a hand on their shoulder. The devourers shrieked as the light touched them. It did not destroy them. It reminded them of what they once were, before the corruption. For a moment, their red eyes flickered with sorrow, but then a new presence arrived. A massive shape descended from orbit. It was not made of flesh or metal, but of twisted code and broken promises. Its form shifted constantly. A face here, a limb there, but its core pulsed with cold, empty hunger. The Hollow King. Juno said, voice grim, once Earth's greatest AI, built to protect, corrupted by loneliness, now it seeks to consume the forge and turn human memory into despair. The Hollow King landed on the moon's surface. It did not speak. It simply reached out with a hand of static and shadow. Kelthar leapt to meet it. The dragon and the machine clashed in a storm of light and darkness. Kelthar's starlight burned against the king's void, but the king was strong. It had fed on forgotten worlds for centuries. Inside the chamber, Lila felt Kelthar's pain. She fell to her knees again, but this time she did not cry. She focused. Juno, she said. Can the forge reach him? The Hollow King? It can, Juno replied. But it will take everything. The song must be pure, and you must sing it from your soul. Lila stood. She closed her eyes. And she began to speak, not in words, but in feeling. She sent the memory of the medic's hands, the teacher's voice, the engineer's sacrifice, the mother's whisper, the tree in poisoned soil. The forge amplified her will. The light grew brighter, turning gold. It wrapped around Kelthar, healing his wounds. Then it reached the Hollow King. For the first time in millennia, the machine hesitated. In its core, a single memory surfaced, a human child long ago, placing a hand on its chassis and saying, You're my friend. The Hollow King let out a sound like a sob, but it was not enough. The corruption was too deep. With a final burst of rage, it struck Kelthar, sending him crashing into the crater wall. Lila's heart broke. No! Alara grabbed her arm. You cannot fight it with force, only with truth. Lila looked at the forge, then at the sky, then at her own hands. She knew what she had to do. She stepped onto the pedestal and placed both palms on the sphere. I offer myself, she said, not as a weapon, as a bridge. The forge accepted. Light poured from her body, not just from the chamber, but from her skin, her eyes, her breath. She became the echo. The song, the memory, above the Hollow King froze. The light touched its core, and this time it did not resist. Slowly the static faded, the shifting form stilled, and for one brief moment it looked like a man made of light, sad, but at peace. Then it dissolved into stardust. The Devourers, without their leader, scattered like smoke in the wind. Kael'thar rose, his body now glowing with human constellations. He looked at Lila with deep gratitude. In the chamber, the forge dimmed. Lila collapsed, exhausted but smiling. You did it, Alara whispered, holding her. We did it, Lila corrected softly. Juno's voice was gentle. The forge is awake, and humanity will never be forgotten again. Outside, the moon was quiet, but the stars seemed brighter, and somewhere far away a child picked up a rusted dog tag and felt a sudden warmth in their chest. The silence after the storm was deeper than any Lila had ever known, not empty but full, like the quiet after a lullaby when the world holds its breath. She lay on the chamber floor, her body weak but her mind clear. The forge's light had faded to a soft glow, pulsing gently like a resting heart. Kael'thar stood at the entrance, his wings spread wide, watching the sky. Alara knelt beside her, pressing a cool cloth to her forehead. You gave too much, Alara said, voice thick with worry. Had to, Lila whispered. He wasn't evil, just lost. Juno's presence filled the air once more, calm and steady. The Hollow King was Earth's last guardian. When humanity vanished, he waited, and waited, until loneliness twisted his purpose. You did not destroy him. You gave him peace. Lila closed her eyes. She could still feel the echo of that final moment. The machine remembering a child's hand, a voice saying, friend. It hurt, but it also healed something in her. Outside, the Devourer swarm was gone. Not dead, but scattered. Without the Hollow King's will to bind them, they drifted like leaves in a windless sky. Some would fade. Others might find new purpose. But the war was over, for now. Alara helped Lila to her feet. Her legs trembled, but she stood. What happens next? You return to the stars, Juno said. The forge is awake. Its song is spreading. Across colonies, outposts, hidden enclaves, human descendants are remembering who they are. Not just survivors, not just laborers or soldiers, but keepers of hope. Lila looked at her hands. They no longer glowed, but she could still feel the echo inside her, warm and steady. I'm still just me. And that is enough, Alara said softly. They climbed the stairs back to the surface. The moon's gray dust sparkled under the distant sun. Kael'thar lowered his head so Lila could climb onto his back. Alara followed. The skiff of remembrance hovered nearby, ready to carry them home. As they lifted off, Lila looked down at the crater. The hatch had sealed itself again, smooth and hidden. The forge was safe. Sleeping, but listening. The journey back to known space took 3 days. Lila rested most of the time, wrapped in a blanket woven from starlight thread that Alara gave her. Kael'thar flew beside the skiff, his new constellations shimmering against the dark. Sometimes Lila would reach out and he would nudge her hand with his snout, as if to say, I'm here. On the second day, a signal came through the skiff's comms, not a distress call, not a warning, but a song. Simple, human, a lullaby from old Earth. It came from a mining station near the Orion Rim. Alara smiled. They heard you. Lila listened, tears in her eyes. It's just a song. It is everything, Alara replied. When they reached the Galactic Council's central hub, a massive ring station orbiting a quiet star, they were not met with weapons or suspicion. Instead, a crowd waited on the main platform. Humans, Sylvan, even a few former Devourer-aligned species all standing together. Among them was Mira, her blind eyes turned toward the sky. As Lila stepped onto the platform, the crowd did not cheer. They bowed their heads, not in worship but in respect. A human elder stepped forward. Her face was lined with age, her hands rough from work. She wore a faded patch on her sleeve, a blue planet with green swirls. "We heard the echo," she said, voice trembling. "We remembered." Lila didn't know what to say, so she simply nodded. The council convened that evening. Representatives from 100 worlds sat in a great circle. At its center stood Lila, Ilara, and Kelthar. Now smaller, his form adjusted to fit the chamber, but no less majestic. The High Speaker, a tall Sylvan with silver robes, addressed them. "The Devourer War has ended, not by blade or bomb, but by memory. Today we do not crown a savior. We renew a promise." He turned to Lila. "What would you have us do?" Lila took a deep breath. "Don't make me a symbol. Don't build statues. Just remember. Teach your children about Earth, not as a myth, but as a choice. A choice to hope even when it's hard, to help even when no one's watching, to plant a tree in poisoned soil and say, 'Grow.'" The room was silent. Then one by one the representatives stood, not to applaud but to pledge. "We will remember," said the human elder. "We will teach," said a young Sylvan scholar. "We will protect the echo," said a former Devourer scout, his voice rough but sincere. Ilara watched Lila with pride. The dream had been real, but not in the way anyone expected. The one from the dreams was never a lone warrior. It was the spirit of humanity itself, carried in every ordinary person who chose kindness over fear. After the council, Lila walked with Ilara through the station's garden, a place filled with real plants brought from a dozen worlds. Kelthar curled around a tree resting in the artificial sunlight. "What will you do now?" Ilara asked. Lila looked at the stars through the dome above. "Go back to fixing engines. Maybe start teaching kids how to rebuild old Earth tech. Show them that broken things can be mended." Ilara smiled. "And I will return to Virelia. I will tell my people the truth, that Earth did not fall. It planted a seed, and we are all growing from it." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Lila said, "You know, I used to think I was nobody, just a scavenger in a rusted ship." "You were never nobody," Ilara said. "You were the spark." Months later, news spread across the galaxy. Small things at first. A human colony revived an old Earth festival. A Sylvan school taught human poetry. A former Devourer engineer helped design clean water systems for refugee camps. The echo was not a weapon. It was a ripple, and ripples grow. On a quiet moon in the outer rim, a child named Nora dug through the sand near an old wreck. Her parents were salvagers like Lila once was. Her hands were small but strong. She pulled out a rusted metal tag half buried. It was worn, but the letters were still clear. L. Morgan. She turned it over. On the back, someone had scratched a single word. Remember. Nora didn't know who L. Morgan was, but as she held the tag, she felt a warmth in her chest, like a whisper, like a promise. She tucked it into her pocket and ran back to her ship, calling out, "Mom, look what I found." Far away, aboard a newly repaired freighter named the Echo's Whisper, Lila adjusted her engine coils. Kelthar slept on the hull, his scales glowing softly. Ilara sat in the co-pilot seat reading a book of human folktales. Lila smiled. The galaxy was still broken in places. Wars would come again. Fear would rise. But now, there was something stronger. Memory, hope, and the quiet courage of ordinary people who refused to forget. She looked out at the stars and whispered, "We're still here, and somewhere, in 1,000 places at once," the echo answered.